Bonjour, bonjour. It's our little weekly check-in and seeing how the old girl's doing. It is Sunday, November 3rd, 2024. We're 35 days away from opening. And I count the days to December 8th. The official Notre Dame Instagram counts yesterday, which would be the 7th of December. So they count yesterday as 35 days, but I count to the day that we could get back in there. There's not a whole lot of new announcements this week because right now it's mostly about cleanup, but in the next couple weeks, the exciting things are going to happen, like all the things that are returning into Notre Dame. But I'm up here above on the bleachers, and it's early on Sunday morning, and one thing they have been doing is relaying all of the stones there in front of the cathedral, and they're doing them a little bit differently. If you could see down here where they kind of just go across, they are going to go diagonally, so kind of coming out from the door at a diagonal, and you could kind of see deep in there how they're being done, and that should all be done in a week, because next week is when they will start bringing in things. The Notre Dame, the statue of Our Lady, will return here on the 15th in a procession, and there's a copy of her right over here, which I'll show you a little closer, and then I'm going to give you a fun little fact about that one and where that statue used to be, the original, on the island. But there has been just so much work done on the outside, cleaning it, taking things out, and I'm excited to see what they've been doing on the roof. So I have not been down here this week. All my tours have been more up around the center and Saint Germain and even Champagne. So we will take a look on the other side as well, but it is pretty exciting. You can see some of the lights on in there through the door. And last week, the video, I shared a bunch of the information about what is going to be happening as far as the price and how they want to add a ticket. This week, there's been more pushing and shoving between the government and the diocese. They're also mad because it was announced that on the 7th they will do big mass and an event in here, and the President Macron will be in there to ceremoniously hand over the keys of Notre Dame to the Archbishop. And the Archbishop aren't very happy about that. But technically, the Catholic Church does not own this church. The government does. The French government does. So we, as the people that live here and pay taxes in France, we own it. So it's kind of a whole pushing and shoving match, as these things usually are, going back centuries and centuries here in France. But then there's also a couple fun things that open this week. 2 mini exhibits open this week at the Orsay that have to do with Notre Dame, and then in the coming weeks, one that opens at the Cluny. So definitely keep tuned in for that, and also make sure you listen to the podcast, because I will be sharing more about the cathedral with 1 month to go, and also exhibits that are coming up in here in Paris, especially a few that have to do with Notre Dame. And I'll definitely share the Cluny exhibit when that opens the 17th. So I cannot wait. So give you a good, we can zoom in on everything here. A nice bird's eye close-up view. Everything's been done in the North Tower. The bells are back. They've grafted new pieces onto the belfry. The organ is back inside. And I have a lot of people also asking about cleaning, because on the side it looks rather dirty, and as a few people commenting and saying she doesn't look very ready, she's not very clean. But hey, listen guys, that's cosmetic. All that stuff is cosmetic. The whole thing about December 8th is to the point that it is finished on the inside and it's safe enough to go in. That is all that matters. I don't care what she looks like. I don't care how dirty she is on the outside, which from the front she's very clean. But cleaning the stones and cosmetic reasons on the outside can wait. And also the same amount of people that will complain that she's not clean enough will be the same amount of people that will complain because it's too clean. So, you know, we can't make everybody happy. But for me, I don't care. I am just so excited. They're at the point that we are a month away from it opening and we could get back inside and enjoy how beautiful it is inside and all the work that all these people have done and all of the, you know, paintings that have been restored, all the sculpture that's been restored. It's just the stories of the amazing people that have done it, and that we could all get back in there. And if you want to get back in there to worship, or, you know, just go to mass, or go in there to pray, or light a candle, whatever reason you want to get back in there, I'm just excited that we get to do it after all this time. So let's go around and check out the site. And I'm going to share a few other things on the island that you might not know as well, that I did do on a walking tour we did a few years ago, that I did with Kate. But I'm going to share a little bit more of that with you today because it's so early and it's not raining and it's nice and quiet. So let's pop around and see what else I get to share with you. This is such a great view. And there is scaffolding still, but this is all scaffolding to get them up and down. So there's an elevator in there, as well as all the stairs. So that is just predominantly to get them to the top. Same thing with the other side. And as soon as they finish the spire and the roof, then that will all come down. Which the spire, the completion of the spire might not be until the beginning of next year. So I don't think that the statues that go up and down the four sides of the apostles and the evangelists, I don't think those are going to be up by next month. I have not seen a single thing written about them and the timeline and when they're going to be back, but I don't think they will be in time. But I can't see one of the clocks through the scaffolding. You can still see the tarp around the open work part of the spire, but all of the lead pieces for that are done, and they just will add them on. But because of how it's situated, there was scaffolding that went up. The scaffolding that went up the spire actually went all the way through the center of the church and onto the ground. So that's 96 meters. And they had to take it all down to finish the inside, to finish the altar, because the transept is right over the altar. So they had to take all that down, and they did that before the Olympics, and they will have to replace it so they could put all of those pieces of lead back on there. And since we are just looking at the tarps, even though that the scaffolding, when they do put it in, they do put it in chunks. They'll build it down here on the ground and then hoist it up with the cranes in big chunks, so they're not doing bar by bar by bar. So that does go a little bit faster, but most likely that will not be completed at all before the opening next month. But that gives us something to look forward to. Now I'm going to take you down here to the left and show you a couple little things here on the island, and including two stories that were made famous by other people, but these were the original versions of those two sort of ghastly stories. And I'll show you over here down on the side street. So it's nice and early here in the morning. And so everybody is just setting up the tables. It's been a holiday weekend here. On the first, it was La Toussaint, so it's All Saints Day. And then yesterday was the day of remembrance for our loved ones that have passed, known as the Day of the Dead in other places. But they kind of combine the two, except for in the churches. They still do events on the first and then on the second with mass, but everybody gets the first off. This year it was a Friday. Next year they're not going to be so happy because it falls on a Saturday, and while places get to close, unless you normally work Saturday, you don't get the day off. So they don't have it here where, back in the States, if Christmas Day fell on a Sunday or a Saturday, you would get like the Friday or the Monday off instead. But that doesn't work here. So if in May, there's certain years that the many holidays in May fall on a weekend, and they're not very happy about that because then they don't have very many days off. But then there's the jackpot years that the holidays fall on, say a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Monday, and they get all the days off. Surprised this is still up. Since we're after November 1st is when they're supposed to take all of these things down, all of these outside, but maybe because it's off here on the corner. But I'm going to tell you two stories down here, and then we'll go around this corner. This is a very famous restaurant, especially on Instagram, that people love, but there are now fake flowers here. So the mums are real, those are not, and they put fake wisteria up here. So that's a no-go on my meter. If there's fake flowers on the facade, nope. But I'm going to tell you a little story over here. And there is police over there because that is the garage for the police motorcycles. But this is a story that goes back to the 14th century, from 1384 to 1387. And I've shared this many times over the last 5 or 6 years. And this was a story about a baker and a barber. And this is, if you've heard the story Sweeny Todd, this is long before that story was ever written. So there was a baker here on the street, and there was a barber here on the street. And because the island in medieval times was pretty much all controlled by the church, you had the cloisters here, which plays into the next story I'm going to tell you. But this was all church property. You also had the Hotel Dieu, which is the hospital, that building right there that you could see in the middle. But it was, you had a lot of students here, so they were coming to school, to the seminary school, to become priests, and they'd go to the barber to get their haircut. Well, every once in a while, they'd go to the barber to get their haircut, and they never come out. And there was the baker next to it, and so the butcher would, and this is a lovely story for the morning, but the butcher would then kill these people, and they would drop them down into the basement, and then they would chop them up, and the baker would make pate and these meat pies. And at the time, Charles VII or VI really loved these things, and they would chop them up and sell them as meat pies. Well, this went on for 3 years, and after 3 years, what finally how they were discovered was that a young man went there to get his haircut, and he had his very loyal puppy dog, and this dog sat outside the barber, and he just sat there for days. And his friends finally found the dog, knowing that this dog would never ever leave his side, and they discovered and ended up alerting the police, and this was how it was discovered, that they were killing these people and turning them into pies. It's lovely, isn't it? But because there's a policeman this is the police garage. If you sweet talk them, you could go in downstairs, but you've got to find the right guy at the right time, and they have to be in a good mood, which is not going to happen very often. But you could go down there, and they're still part of the foundation of that original building going back to the 14th century. So a little bit morbid for your morning. But then there's another story that is just past it over here. And I am going to meet you on the other side because they don't always like to be filmed. And so I don't want to make this guy upset. But I love this side of this building over here. Now that's real plants. But I'm gonna just meet you on the other side here in 1 second. You see why I love this time of the day, especially on a Sunday morning, because it's so quiet. Look at it peeking. See all these great views. We'll walk down this street and you'll get a fantastic view of Notre Dame. And they're still adding the kind of banister section around the top. They haven't completed that yet up there. So this building, there's this plaque here that is rather new, and that poet it's the 1st of January 1516. So recently, underneath in the middle of the transept, they did a bunch of work because they excavated underneath it. They took about the altar and they excavated underneath it in Notre Dame because they were running all new lines of state-of-the-art electric, fire suppression, everything. But when they did that, they found a bunch of things, some of which will be on display at the Cluny, but I'm sure this will not be. But they found some sarcophagus. And one sarcophagus, they were unsure of who it is, but they think it's this poet, Du Bellay. And they're not sure for 100% yet, but they believe that was him. And this is a new plaque, and this is really interesting because this is where he died. And look at how close we are to Notre Dame. So that is the first time that I have actually seen this on here. But we're gonna head around the corner to this building. And the building that was here is no longer. But there was a building that stretched from this side of the street all the way back, all the way around to the quay. And this was a building that a gentleman, Uncle Fulbert, lived in, and he had a niece, and his niece at 11 years old came to live with him. And she was incredibly intelligent. She was very smart, very lovely young lady. Came here to live with her uncle. She was born, her name was Heloise. She was born around 1092. So this is the end of the 11th century. She came to live with him in Paris. And she ended up meeting a gentleman that was a little bit older than her named Abelard. And Abelard was a schoolmaster of the cloisters, which was right here on the island. And he became her tutor. And he just thought she was amazing and just a brilliant young lady. And the two of them fell in love. And the story gets a little bit more twisted, but we're going to go around the corner and I'll show you the front of it. But I do love this little street. And I forgot, and I should have brought, we actually have a family member that was a painter. He was our family member by marriage. He was originally born in England, Edwin Dakin. And Edwin Dakin came and lived in Paris for 2 years and did quite a few paintings, including one of Notre Dame, which is the one I wish we had. We have a few of them still in my family. But he did a painting of this street. He did 2 paintings of this street and this view. And I have printed copies of them, and I should have brought them with me, but I will do that here in the next weekend or two and show you what that looked like. But then this is also this really great house on the side, but we'll come back to this after we go up to where our story continues. But it would have stretched all along here, and it was a massive house. And that back then it was very different. The Cité did not have the wall along the Seine. Most of the walls started in the 14th century, mid 14th century. And so this is the 11th, end of the 11th, start of the 12th century. So it would have been just like a beach here. It would have been just, you know, sand and silt going into the water. But we're going to come back down this street in a minute too. So there's a little reminder for this little love story right here. Make sure there's no cars coming. But right here, the ancient home of Heloise and Abelard, 1118. So it was rebuilt in 1849. And the two of them fell in love and ended up actually getting married on the chapel of St. Christopher that is there on the island, right where Notre Dame is today. And she ended up, he died in 1142, she died in 1164. But before they passed away, they had a very steamy love affair. They had a child, the child they named Astrolabe. And the two of them were deeply in love. And there's letters, there's a lot of known letters of Heloise and Abelard. And if you ever read them, they get pretty steamy. And they were into some quite crazy things. So, but they are the very first, you know, Romeo and Juliette, long before Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet. But the two of them were in love, and Uncle Fulbert was not very happy about that. So he had sent his daughter, she went off to join a nunnery, and Abelard was still here on the island. And when he was here on the island one night, Uncle wasn't very happy, and so he sent some goons over to his home that was here as well, very close to the island, on the island here, and ended up castrating him. And so poor Abelard, he survived this, but he then left and left Paris as well, and went to a church, lived out his life there. The two of them still kept in contact until one of them died, and he died first. But you can also find their graves over at Père Lachaise, which this week was just Halloween. And so it's always a great place to go. But there is a grave, which is a beautiful Gothic little chapel, and it's made from the stones that came from the church where he used to be buried. When he died, since he died first in 1142, when she died in 1164, she wanted to be added into his casket. So the two of them were buried together. And when they were opening Père Lachaise, because it was so far out, and people didn't want to go that far, and they didn't want to bury their loved ones because it was way out of Paris, they decided to move some celebrities. So they moved Jean de La Fontaine and Molière out there. And then not long after that, they moved Heloise and Abelard, but we don't really know if they're actually there or not. But, you know, it's still a great story. Another person, Josephine of Napoleon and Josephine, she loved the stories, and so did Marie de Medici. So they have a long following, but you could see these figures on the door here. And you see these on quite a few Paris doors. And some people equate these as being Heloise and Abelard, but we don't officially know. But because they're on this door specifically, which is where they live, that's why most people think this is who they are. But you could just see this. We're just here at the end. There's Ile Saint-Louis right across the way there, and our palm trees that should probably go away pretty soon. And then my friend's cooking school, La Cuisine, is right over here. That's fantastic. But it's a cool, breezy, but dry, thankfully, late fall day. But you can see Abelard up here. And of course, Heloise. But I did a podcast episode all about their story a few years ago. So I will post a link down there in the comments or in the title, and so you could check that out. But we're gonna head down this little street. I'll show you one other fun little thing. But there's also this house, which when you look at this house, I remember the first time I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. It's so old. but it's really not that old. It was done by a gentleman that he did it in, had it redone in the end of the very late 19th, 20th century. And he had it done so it looked like the house that was here, that it was medieval. But here also you have the marker. There's the marker here. You see where it says crew. This is how high the Seine once was, which is pretty much as tall as me. And that is when we had the wall. But I also have done a couple episodes on the podcast about the floods of Paris, which are really interesting. But I do love this door. I do love I've never seen anybody here. I've never seen anybody coming in or out or the windows open. But it does have some fantastic little details. Look, we've got the little grate there on the window. It sounds like water is still running in this little fountain. But it's just kind of a really fun little medieval street, which is what's so nice about the two islands, because they are small. Haussmann really didn't do much on the islands except for what he did around Notre Dame. As you look at Notre Dame, to the right towards the left bank, there were buildings there, which they all had. He had removed, so you had this amazing view and vista of Notre Dame, and you walked up to it. Sweet little puppy dog on the morning. Here's part of the prefecture. And this is part of the... You had... that's part of the police station where you also come when you are working on your visa. But this location right here, this building, and you have a little clue here because on the tiles, you see the N and D for Notre Dame. And this used to be a church, the Saint Agnes. And in here, that statue that I showed you that's out in front of Notre Dame of Our Lady that was sitting underneath, it was just to the right of the altar as you looked at it in the transept. And oh my gosh, there's a dead rat. I have to get away. But this is where it was. And so that statue itself is older than Notre Dame. But they found it here, and this is still a building that is owned by the Catholic Diocese. And they found that in here. And there's also a little tiny part of the chapel that was here, dating back to 1116. It was one of the 23 chapels here on the island. And when you think of how small the island actually was back then, and I'll show you a little marker up here, but you also see her up here. But isn't it an amazing building? It's beautiful. But there are pillars in there from the original chapel and steel part, but it's never open to the public. But we're gonna head down here and around the corner, and I'm gonna show you a little marker of what will show you what size the island used to be. Here just at the end of the little street. Across the way we have the Hotel de Ville that still has all of the Olympic banners up. Really, that's time for us to move on. But they just announced in the last few weeks that they're planting a ton of trees in front of that as well. So the huge Place de Hotel de Ville will be completely covered with trees. But here you have this very picturesque little restaurant here, and it actually has a really fun story. And so it goes back to 1223, and you can see these little doves above the door. And a gentleman that was working on the construction of Notre Dame had lived here, and something happened, the building collapsed, and the neighbors kept seeing this dove flying in and out of it, and he would fly in there and come back with like some food and fly in and out and water in his mouth, and he'd go in there, and finally all of the neighbors were like, what exactly is going on? So they went there and they kept watching this, for days and days, went in and started picking up the stones and trying to get out, and they found this other little dove that was in there. So this is why it has this fun little dove above the door. And then it also has where it says the history, 1223, the legend de la Colombe. But right up here in the cobblestones, you see this marker kind of this little cutout of the mark of the cobblestones going the other direction. This is where there once was the wall. So this at one time was the edge of the island. So much earlier than the 11th or 12th century. But this is hopefully, because of these videos, you also know to get up early and head out and walk around Paris, and especially around the places that get very crowded with tourists as the day goes on. But it is a great time to come in and get the place all to yourself. We'll walk back here again and go around the corner and check on Notre Dame. I have had people tell me that this restaurant is lovely. But I'm gonna meet you on the other side, on the south side of Notre Dame. Still have the braces under the buttresses on this side, but on the north side, or south side, some are actually already removed, which I've mentioned in the previous videos that those were some of the very first things that they put in. Said it was supposed to be partly sunny this morning and all day today. So here is the excavation. It's underneath the altar. But they found pieces of the screen, the old Jubé, or the rood screen. And those should be at this exhibit at the Cluny. But work will continue for the next 3 to 4 years around here with work on the buttresses, on the exterior, especially back here at the Chevet, and also planting all of the new trees, everything that they're going to do around here to make it a little bit more friendly. They are going to, this back side here, they are going to get rid of the parking and make it so that it's only emergency vehicles, taxis, etc. could come through here. I think it's tomorrow that they're doing a huge change in the whole center of Paris to that. So we'll see how that works out, which is nice in theory, but the case in point is actually the fire of Notre Dame. But because they have closed so many roads and made them pedestrianized and put huge pieces of what they call road furniture, like straight over there where you see the cute pup, it does make it very difficult for emergency vehicles to get through. So there is another side to that idea. Great for the environment, but all it also does is push all those vehicles out around the edge of Paris instead of in Paris. So while the air quality in Paris gets better, it gets worse. So it's a little difficult to have a city this size, a major metropolitan city, and make it pedestrianized. Look at there. Oops. Hey. I don't think the zoom capability knows what to focus on here. Look at, you can see right through the steps. I do love the iPhone. The new one, it's the 16 Pro, and the camera on the 16 Pro is amazing. Oh, back up a little. So we're gonna go over here and check out how it's going On the other side, what we see on the south side, the little parks are closed again today. I don't know if that's because of the holiday or if it's supposed to be windy. But it looks like there's a whole big, I wonder if this piece of equipment is coming in. And these little tents are still set up around here. But we're gonna get over onto the other side of the bridge and take a look at the south side. Looks like they're just opening the park there. And the level of the Seine is back to normal. The ship is not normally docked there. It's quite calm. It is if you are here, especially in the nice months when it's sunny. Get up really early and come out, because when it's sunny and it's just this beautiful, the sun turns into kind of a mirror and it's just smooth, and the reflections of the buildings, and it is pretty stunning and definitely well worth getting up early. So it looks remotely the same as it did a week ago on this side. But like I said, most of the stuff that's going to be happening in the next 4 weeks is all going to be on the inside, returning everything in there. They already put the liturgical furniture in there, so the pieces, the altar, the chairs, all of that kind of stuff is already returned. So the chairs will come. They were blessing them on the 31st, and then they should be on their way to Paris now, if not already arriving. So those will be added back into the cathedral this week. But still, there's more. It looks like they are actually building more scaffolding up to the spire, so that's another really good sign. So I love it when they take this scaffolding down, but I'm pretty excited when they're putting it up for that. So they have been building the bases right there that will go for, they will put the statues on that, and that's on all 4 corners. And it looks like the scaffolding is on top of that, but I think just this side, just the southeast side, that you can see right through there. I can't unsee that dead rat. If this is your first time watching, I have a huge aversion to rodents, especially alive, but even dead. And really see in there. So the sacristy, I've had people asking me about the roof of the sacristy. They will be updating and replacing all of that. There was just an article in the paper yesterday here in France that the lead roofs in Paris in general really all need a little bit of love and attention. And those pieces, the way that you see the sheets, pieces on the roof of the lead, the flat pieces were all done in England, because there isn't a manufacturer of those here in France anymore. So they had to actually send all those to Italy, to England, to redo, to recreate. Oh, the scaffolding is completely gone to the left of the rose window, to our left, except for those tiny pieces along the top and at the tower, but all of that is finally open. So this is completely open in there, except for some going against the transept. So I would imagine in this next week or so that scaffolding on the right should all come down as well. Because they were just putting in all those pieces, the sculpted pieces, the banister. But they have done work inside the treasury. So while the treasury wasn't damaged at all, they did do a lot of work on there, bringing it back kind of to the Viollet-le-Duc, what he had created, and respecting his ideas. The stained glass, everything is returned and everything is clean. And the treasury items will probably be one of the very last things that goes back. Also the crown of thorns. Just take it all in there. Zoom in. So you can see the open work. All of that underneath is still raw wood. This also gives it a chance for it to dry, even though it's not optimal conditions, because it's, but that's also why they covered it. But when Viollet-le-Duc did this, when he did the spire in the 1850s, he did it when it was, they used green wood. So it was still pretty fresh wood that had been cut. So they had to do it the same way. You see this little pinnacle here has seen some better days. It's not a blue sky and sunny day, but I feel like maybe it's out there. Maybe it'll show up. But you have all of those, you can see in there those red and blue hoses. Those help almost like a vacuum, pulling dust and things out, but there's probably not much dust in there at the moment. It's pretty spotless. There is still conflicting information out there about December 8th, the opening day. I've had that blocked off on my calendar, and the 9th and the 10th. No tours, no clients those days, because it is conflicting. They will be doing other masses. They will be doing special events for 6 months, all the way to the Pentecost in June. And so they're going to be doing the same mass, the mass that they do on the 8th. They will do that mass for 2 weeks straight, so that everybody has a chance to come in and see. Here's lots of leaves on the ground and garbage. I wonder if this is the same pigeon that's always sitting down here on the bouquiniste. But she's looking really good. So there's always one sitting right here. Oh, this is his bouquiniste. I bet they are going to be happy to have it open again, even though there's a lot of people visiting all day long. I do a tour all around it. I could spend 3 hours just on the outside of Notre Dame telling you everything about it. So if you're coming in the next month, reach out to book a tour. But if you're coming after it opens, also reach out, because I cannot wait to share the inside and all the fantastic paintings and the stories and all of the fantastic historic details. And there she is. It's kind of great when it gets colder. and the leaves are off the tree. I've had a few clients lately, in the last week or two, that they have asked me which is my favorite time to be in Paris. And honestly, one of my favorite times, of course, is spring, and the fall is beautiful. And when is there really a bad time to be in Paris? One of my very favorite times, though, is January and February, because it's quieter. Most of the trees are bare, and so you could really see a lot. So, you know, if we look back a few months ago, and a picture of that right there, you wouldn't see all of these details. But because the leaves are gone, we really can. So January, February gets even better. And also the light, because you have the very low sun, so it casts the most amazing shadows on everything. And it's just a really beautiful time to be here. And it's quiet. But make sure to check around here. But I will bid you adieu on this wonderful Sunday, and hope that you enjoyed another weekly little visit around here to see. And hopefully maybe next week, maybe the parve will be done. We will have to see. But I also am going to be doing one very shortly because all of the Christmas stuff starts to go into place. And you know, we also don't have Thanksgiving here, so nobody is complaining about it being too early and letting us get through one holiday, because we don't have that holiday in France. So put it all up, because it is a beautiful time to be here. And again, if you want to see all the Christmas decorations, you can still come in January or even February, because usually most of the lights are still out and on, even at Valentine's Day. It's very bizarre. But there you go, and I hope you all have a fantastic week and day. And for those in North America, that you enjoyed your extra hour of sleep, and have a fantastic Sunday. And make sure you tune into the podcast, Paris History avec a Hemingway, on La Vie Creative. And then also make sure you sign up to get my weekly newsletters, as well as if you need any help with your planning your trip to Paris, a custom curated trip for everything you want to do, some of the best restaurants, and some special things only I get to share with you. So reach out, ClaudineHemingway.com. And look at that, I could see some blue up there. Might have some blue sky a little bit here today anyway. All right, guys, thank you so much. If you want to leave a tip, you could do that at ClaudineHemingway.com, on PayPal or Venmo. And I'll see you guys next week.